My name is Alina Castor, and at 17 I should have been wrapped in the warmth of family love, bags packed with dreams for the future and laughter echoing in the halls of our home. Maplewood Heights is a small town where everyone knows everyone, where children play in the streets, and the scent of fresh pastries wafts from the local bakery. It seems like a picture-perfect setting from a movie where nothing goes wrong. Yet here I was, standing in the cold embrace of a reality that felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. Our house, a cozy two-story in a neighborhood of white picket fences once filled with laughter and joy, now felt like a stage where I played the part of the abandoned daughter. The echoes of old laughter seemed to dance around me, mocking my current solitude. I could see the framed family photos lining the hallway, my dad and me at the beach, sun-kissed and carefree, my mother's warm smile shining in every corner of those memories. I frowned, stealing glances at the photos, feeling ripped from their joyful moments. It all started when my father met her, my stepmother. Her name was Patricia. Initially, I can remember her appearance as that of a warm sunbeam breaking through the clouds. Her kindness seemed genuine, her care evident in the way she made elaborate dinners, organized game nights, and effortlessly stepped into the role of a mother. I foolishly believed we could be a family again. I let my guard down, heart fully exposed to this new woman who had come into our lives like a breath of fresh air. But fresh air doesn't always signal warmth. Over time, I could sense the shift in the atmosphere, a storm brewing far off in the sky, signaling that change was here and it was dark. The laughter faded and quiet moments filled with glances replaced perfectly timed jokes. The tension was palpable, like electricity in the air before a thunderstorm. My belongings started to vanish, my favorite board game, the cash I saved for new sneakers, and the watch my grandfather had gifted me on my 10th birthday. Each missing item felt like a small part of my childhood being stolen right under my nose, snatched away by the very person who was supposed to nurture it. Every time I broached the subject with my father, his answer was the same. Alina, Patricia would never do that. Those words cut deeper than any knife ever could, carving a chasm between us that I felt powerless to bridge. The pain lodged in my throat. I wanted to scream, to tell him that my world was crumbling, but the words never quite formed. After all, how could I convince him of the truth when she appeared so put together, so loving? In his eyes, I was the problem, a teenager struggling to adapt to new circumstances. Dad, I'm not lying, I pleaded one evening, my voice shaky as I stood in the living room, my hands trembling with frustration. I fought against the tears threatening to spill over. It's just, things keep disappearing. I gestured around at the bare shelves that once held my acclaimed collection of books and the board games that had filled our weekends with laughter. First, it was my board game, then the money, and now my grandfather's watch. My father sighed, raking a hand through his hair, his brow furrowed. Patricia is not like that, Alina. She loves us both. You need to trust that. His response sent a jolt of anger racing through me. Trust. How could I trust someone who so easily slipped into my life, taking over my place? It's hard to trust someone who's stealing from me, I whispered, hurt radiating through every word, but there was no response. Just a heavy silence as he turned and walked away, leaving me feeling smaller, more invisible than before. I tried to confront Patricia, ready to unveil my frustration, yet every interaction felt like walking into a brick wall. Each time I met her eyes, I was met with that soft, condescending smile that twisted my insides. It was as if she knew she was untouchable, mocking me with those delicate hands of hers, lifting them in mock innocence while my grievances rolled off her back like water off a duck. I would watch as she turned her gaze towards my father, pouring sweet words over him, reinforcing his trust. "Do you want to help me with dinner, Alina?" she would ask, her tone all syrupy sweetness and fake concern. I have some lovely herbs to chop. No, I did not want to play house with her anymore. I could feel despair creeping in slowly, wrapping itself around my heart like a vine determined to choke out the last remnants of joy I had left. I was seen as the problem, the untrustworthy daughter who refused to accept this new reality. By the time high school rolled around, my existence felt like a series of shadows reflected in a broken mirror, each shard cutting deeper than the last. I would wander through the school halls, cloaked in isolation, my peers whispering behind my back and taunting me with names like thief and liar. Those words scraped against my skin, puncturing my heart, yet I remained silent. Each weekend visit to that house felt like a trial I had to endure, a stage where I performed the expected roles while my hands were tied. It was in those moments that I would gaze longingly at the walls adorned with happy family photos and wonder when it had spiraled so far out of control. But it always circled back to her, the woman who stood in my way, preventing me from reclaiming my rightful place. If only my father could see her for who she truly was, the wolf cloaked in the sheep's skin, a seductress who wanted nothing more than to tear our family apart. Then one fateful evening, everything changed. That day was colder than usual, a chilling wind that seemed to nip at me like 1,000 tiny teeth as I walked home, dragging each footstep through the thickening snow. The landscape of Maplewood Heights was wrapped in a shroud of gray, the skies heavy with clouds that threatened to spill their contents on an unforgiving world. My heart felt just as heavy as I approached the door, bracing myself for the sour atmosphere waiting to greet me inside. As I stepped through the threshold, the air became thick, heavy, weighing down on me. It was almost suffocating. My heart dropped as my eyes landed on it, the prized baseball glove of my father's hanging on the wall like a trophy. A trophy of what I thought the house that my childhood used to be. The glove dangled there, taunting me. It stood as an accusation, a glaring reminder of the lack of trust my stepmother had sown between my dad and me. I felt a wave of anger bloom inside me, unfurling like the petals of a dark flower. I had to choose. Would I let her take everything from me? No longer. I would not allow this twisted fate to continue. I was tired of being the victim in her merciless game. I needed to fight back. Trisha, I called, trying to sound steady and fierce, but my voice cracked slightly. I took a step forward, the tension crackling in the air as if I were demanding a showdown. Are you home? Just a second, dear. Her sing-song voice wafted from the kitchen, accompanied by the familiar scent of whatever delicious meal she had concocted this time. I grit my teeth, trying to force out the frustration that bubbled within me. Where did you find the glove? I asked as she rounded the corner, her bright eyes sparkling with a hint of amusement. She seemed genuinely surprised by my question, as if she had been caught off guard. Oh, that old thing, she replied, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Your father just found it in the attic, covered in dust. I thought it might look nice up there. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and I could see the faintest glimmer of something darker flickering in her gaze. You had no right to touch it, I shot back, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. That glove means everything to him. Do you even care about what he feels? She stepped closer, an ominous smirk playing on her lips. Now, Alina, she cooed. Don't get so riled up. I just thought it would be nice to display family heirlooms. Don't you want things to feel more homey? My heart raced, adrenaline pumping through my veins as I regarded her with a newfound hostility. This is not your home, Patricia, I snapped, my breath quickening. You are just a visitor pretending to be part of my family. You think you can come in here, play house, and erase my memories like they are nothing? Her smile faltered for just a moment, and I could see the way her eyes darkened, a storm brewing behind those delicate features. You have a real talent for drama, dear, she replied coolly, her tone sharp and cutting. Maybe it's time you grow up and realize that not everything is about you. In that moment, it felt like the ground shifted beneath my feet. My heart hammered in my chest, an electric mixture of fear and fury whirling inside me. I could no longer accept this twisted fate she had sown for me. I needed to stop being her puppet and tangle the strings back into her web. I will not let you take anything more from me, I whispered, a fierce declaration forming in the depths of my heart. I needed to fight back. The storm began to gather, and in that gust of determination I could feel the tide turning. It wouldn't be long before I unleashed my plans, and Patricia would finally see me for who I truly was, not the daughter she could push around, but a force to be reckoned with. With that realization swelling like a tide within me, I turned on my heel, leaving her stunned in my wake. I knew this was merely the calm before the storm, but every drop of fury that filled my veins promised retribution was on its way. I could feel it in my bones, and as I ascended the stairs, a wicked smile crept onto my lips. This was far from over. In the dimly lit dining room, a palpable tension hung in the air, almost thick enough to cut with a knife. The table was set like a scene from a culinary magazine, each dish a vibrant display of color: roasted chicken glazed with honey, a zesty salad splashed with bright cherry tomatoes, and a creamy potato mash that swirled like clouds. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on the walls, and the rich aroma of food enveloped me, comforting yet laced with a sense of impending revelation. I took a deep breath, letting the scent swirl around me, but it did little to calm the racing of my heart as my father and stepmother settled in. Wow, Alina, you really outdid yourself, my father said, his eyes lighting up as he surveyed the spread. He reached for the chicken, carving a generous piece onto his plate. You know, you've always had a knack for this. I'm so proud of you. Thanks, Dad, I replied, forcing a smile that felt like a mask. It was hard to focus on the joy of the moment when my mind was racing with thoughts of what was to come. Beneath the cordiality of our dinner, a storm brewed in my heart, each pulse resonating with the intent of exposing the deceit that had been plaguing our household. Patricia, always the gracious host, lifted her glass of sparkling water as if in toast, her tone dripping sweetly with feigned innocence. To family dinners, she declared with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. May we always cherish moments like these. I nodded, the tightness in my chest threatening to unravel any pretenses I had carefully woven. The room felt stifling, and I could hear the beating of my heart drumming in sync with the intensity of the moment. I forced myself to chew slowly, to focus on the food while keeping my eyes trained on Patricia. I noted every little shift, every flicker of unease, but she wore her mask exceptionally well. I had to crack it. I think it's wonderful you take the time to cook, Alina, Patricia said, her voice laced with that syrupy sweetness. Not every girl your age does that. Just trying to keep my skills sharp, especially since I'll need to impress someone eventually. I shot back lightly, each word sharpened with the intention behind my hidden agenda. My eyes flickered to my father, whose mouth was full, oblivious to the double meaning rolling beneath my words. Patricia's smile faltered just slightly, a mere twitch of the lips, but it was enough to send a thrilling jolt of triumph through me. Impress someone, care to share who that might be? She pressed her sharp gaze now on me like a hawk watching its prey. I kept my smile intact, letting the light dance in my eyes as I leaned back slightly. Just someone special, I replied, letting the words hang in the air. You know how it is, I'm just waiting for the right moment. I'm right, she muttered, darting her gaze back to her plate. I could tell the subtle shift in her demeanor. Her fingers clenched the fork a little tighter and an imperceptible tension rippled through her. Soon, her facade would crack. That right, Dad? You always said that waiting for the right person makes all the difference. I forced the conversation back toward him, appearing eager to engage while secretly tightening the noose around Patricia's neck with my words. Absolutely, he said, nodding vigorously, oblivious. You should always be careful with your heart. Take your time, sweetheart. It's a big decision. His warm gaze, full of naive affection, felt like molten iron against my skin as I turned to Patricia, who was now visibly tensing at the table. My heart danced at her unease like a conductor guiding an orchestra to reach a crescendo. I thought of all the times she had treated me like a shadow in my own home, always pulling at the strands of my life while pretending to nurture it. Each stolen moment felt like a wrapped present, and I was excited to unwrap it for my father, exposing the truth hidden beneath layers of deceit. As we finished our meal, I gestured toward the living room. Let's play a game. I found that board game you used to love, Dad. I thought it'd be a perfect way to spend the evening. Sounds great, he chimed, clearly pleased by my enthusiastic suggestion. Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of wariness crossing her face. She knew what I was doing, and so did I. This was my chess match, and each piece was carefully positioned. We shuffled into the living room, the atmosphere thick with unsaid words and tension that rippled underneath. I had carefully placed the board game on the coffee table, its box the shade of rustic mahogany, holding the promise of camaraderie, but in my mind it was a cleverly disguised weapon. I watched as Patricia opened the game, the edges of her mouth twitching ever so slightly, a mask of forced happiness barely concealing her unease. This will be fun, she exclaimed, but the tremor in her voice suggested otherwise. I exchanged glances with my father, whose excitement engulfed the room like warmth from a fire. As we settled in for the game, I recalled the conversations I had captured on my phone over the past few days. Just yesterday, I had caught her muttering to herself, her voice soft but dripping with malice as she spoke about how she was reshaping my father's perception of me, how she was pulling him toward her side while casting me aside like a forgotten toy. Each snippet of video became a thread in the tapestry of my plan. I could almost hear the strands weaving tighter, forming a definitive picture of her manipulation. Okay, who wants to start? I asked, purposely keeping my demeanor light, my voice playful. Dad. Or Patricia. I think the birthday girl should go first, my father decided with a chuckle, turning to me, his eyes sparkling with joy. All right, let me get my dice, I said, standing and moving to the shelf where I'd hidden my phone. I could hear the tension in Patricia's breath as I reached over and feigned surprise. Oh, no way, I think I found those missing game pieces you thought were lost, Patricia. Patricia's eyes darted toward me, a flash of surprise mingled with panic. My heart raced, adrenaline boiling as I casually pulled out the long-lost pieces, the shiny tokens pinging together like the bells of an awakening church. I thought we'd never see these again. Didn't you say you saw them under your chair? I asked sweetly, my voice smooth like honey but laced with a slight undercurrent of steel. Her response was swift, a forced laugh escaping her lips. Oh yes, how funny that they turned up now, must have slipped my mind. Her demeanor changed, a chill creeping into the air, but I was far from finished. With a flick of my wrist, I activated the phone under the table, broadcasting the quiet chaos of my plan to capture everything. I smiled innocently, but the reality coursing beneath the surface was electric, and my pulse quickened at the thought of what was to come. So which game do we want to play? I asked, adjusting my seat angled toward my father, exorbitantly showcasing my apparent excitement to include everyone. Oh, I think we can go with the classic, he replied, happiness shining but completely unaware of the brewing storm. Perfect choice, I said, barely concealing the sharp laugh bubbling within me. The dice rolled smoothly, clattering across the board as we engaged in the game, our laughter echoing in the corners of the room, though my eyes remained relentless on Patricia. As the game progressed, she began to sweat, her brow lined with uncertainty. I caught the way her fingers danced nervously with the pieces, of how her forced laughter began to fade into an unsettling silence when she sensed I was leaning in close to continue the taunts of my perfectly planned response. What does my move say about me, Dad? I asked innocently, leaning forward with a glimmer in my eyes. We all have a role to play, right? Patricia darted an anxious glance at my father, who grinned back at me, oblivious to the undercurrents surrounding him. Well, how you play reveals your character, sweetie, he answered, an earnestness shining in his eyes. Yes, exactly, isn't that right, Patricia? I pressed, my gaze poking her like a needle, ensuring I could see the cracks forming beneath her overtly calm exterior. Of course, she replied, but her voice cracked, breaking like glass under pressure. Your moves reflect your intentions. How incredibly true. I mused inwardly, feeling a thrill of anticipation as I prepared to unveil all of her hidden intentions in front of my father, who sat blissfully unaware of the truth lurking in the shadows. I leaned back, feeling triumph surge through me as I shared a few calculated glances with her, a game within a game as I mentally noted the way she tensed whenever I made an intentional misstep or faux pas. It was all part of the plan. I was sharpening my tools, and it felt delicious. Let me show you what real strategy is, I whispered, setting the stage for the inevitable revelation. The table thudded under the weight of my father's joyful disposition while my own heart thudded in thrilling anticipation. Soon I would lay bare the tangled web of deceit that Patricia had wove, every captured whisper, every misstep of her alleged perfection, soon to be unveiled before my father. In that moment, as the room echoed with laughter, the air crackling with my every word and look, I felt the fire within me grow brighter, transforming from a flicker of vengeance into an unquenchable blaze. Whether Patricia recognized it or not, tonight would become a night of reckoning. The curtain would be drawn back, and the world she had so carefully crafted would soon begin to unravel before the very eyes she'd underestimated. The trap was set, and I was ready for her to take the bait. The sound of my own heartbeat echoed in my ears as I stood at the threshold of the kitchen, my reflection flickering on the darkened screen of my phone. I had finally summoned the courage to confront the viper who had twisted her way into our lives, poisoning everything we had once held dear. "There is something I want to show you," I said, my voice trembling slightly. The words felt heavy on my tongue, an incantation summoned to unveil the truth that had slumbered too long in silence. My father was perched at the dining table, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in my heart. He looked at Patricia beside him, his expression warm, filled with a misplaced affection that only fueled the flames of my resolve. The way her smile radiated back at him twisted something in my stomach, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the mission at hand. As I hit the play button, silence enveloped the room, swallowing the clattering of forks and plates. It was as if time had paused, the air thick and still, pregnant with anticipation. The first video flickered to life, revealing an unguarded moment, the camera capturing Patricia's true nature. I watched her heartily rummage through my belongings, her laughter ringing out like a siren's call, mocking me as she recounted her cunning schemes. Each giggle that had once seemed harmless now hung like an ominous cloud, pregnant with intentions I had been too naive to suspect. My father's face morphed from confusion to disbelief, his brow furrowing as the stark reality began to unfold. "Wait, is that me?" he muttered, pushing his chair back slightly, knuckles white as he gripped the edges of the table. "What is going on here?" Patricia's laughter, so carefree just moments ago, turned to shock. For a fleeting second, I could almost feel a simpering sympathy for her as I observed the familiar charm slip from her face like a handshake gone icy and unwelcome. "Elena, what is this?" she exclaimed, her voice rising in desperate inflection, coiling around the room like a serpent ready to strike. I stood my ground, steady and resolute, knowing there was no escape for her now. I could feel the momentum shifting in the atmosphere, like the first crack of thunder on an approaching storm as my father leaned closer. "What is this, Patricia? Tell me it is not true," he asked, his voice unyielding like a judge ready to pass sentence. Each word fell heavily, striking against the anvil of denial that had threatened to ensnare the truth. "Wait, this is," Patricia stammered, panic flashing through her eyes, flickering like candlelight on the edge of madness. "You do not understand." She must have manipulated those videos. Her defenses began to fracture, her agile mind scrambling to weave a web of deception, but I saw through it clearly. "No, Patricia, you are the one who has manipulated everything," I said, my voice steady, each word laced with a strength I barely recognized as my own. With each rewind of the video, with every revelation, I felt the weight of my resolve grow, my trembling hands turning firm as steel. My father's brow knitted deeper, his disbelief now mingled with a dawning realization, an ugly truth that forced its way into light. "Elena has no reason to lie. This was you. You have betrayed us," he whispered, and my heart threatened to crash against the walls of my ribcage. His voice was an echo of heartbreak, twisting a knife deeper into the chasm that was quickly forming between us. My breath hitched in my throat, wrapping around a pain I had never known. Watching my father grapple with the disillusionment was almost excruciating. I could see the love he held for me battling against the love he had for her, a duality that threatened to drown us all in the overwhelming tide of hurt. "Dad, please," I pleaded, wishing he could see me rather than the reflection of his perfect wife and the lies she had woven around us. "This is the truth. It's always been the truth. Money, status." "She's been using you," Patricia exclaimed, her voice rising once more, a frantic crescendo full of desperation as she struggled to re-establish control. "You think you know everything, but you do. I have given you nothing but love." "Love," I scoffed, indignation boiling within me. "You call this love? You've turned our lives into your playground, Patricia. You think I'm blind? You think we don't see the way you smile when you think you're winning?" The air crackled between us, charged and raw. "Sweetheart, let's not pretend everything is as it seems," she snapped back, the calm facade shattered. The subtle nuances that once defined her charm evaporated. Her voice exuded a venom that I had absorbed in silence for far too long. "Enough," my father roared, and the room fell into silence again except for the heavy heartbeat thrumming in my ears, a barometer of the tension thick enough to slice. I dared to look at him, seeing the clash of emotions dance behind his eyes. "I want the truth, Patricia." "No more games." I could see the flicker of something dark cross Patricia's features, a realization that she was cornered. "You think you know what you want," she muttered, her voice softer now but filled with a simmering anger. "Do you really want to go down this path? You will ruin this family." "Ruin? You are the one who has done that," I shot back, emboldened by the surge of truth empowering my limbs. "You are the one who has twisted every joy into a scheme, leaving chaos in your wake. You stripped our family of happiness, all so you could reign supreme, being the controlling puppet master." My father's hands were gripping the edge of the table, the wood creaking beneath the pressure. Patricia, tell me this is not true, that this is some misunderstanding. Patricia's eyes darted between my father and me, searching for an escape route, but there was none. The air warped around us in a thick haze of despair and distrust. You are just a child, Alina. She screamed, a wild desperation lacing her words like a tempest. What do you know about love and family? You don't get to decide what is real. I may be young, but I am not naive. I have watched you manipulate my life with your cold, calculating smile, I said, my voice steady now, my anger channeled into clarity. You are the storm that has clouded our hearts, Patricia. You have poisoned everything we once held dear, and it is time the truth emerged from the shadows. Not lying. She shouted back, trembling as the facade of her confidence slipped further. You think you understand, but you do not. You are just a little girl playing with fire. My father's eyes narrowed. No, she is the one bringing light to the dark, he stated, the gravity of his words crushing down on her. You have betrayed not just her but this family, Patricia. I could feel my heart race, a mix of relief and sorrow swirling in my heart like a tempest. I had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that our life could recover from all this, that my father would see the reality and choose me, choose us. But it was not just about choosing sides anymore. It was about uncovering the truth that lay buried beneath layers of lies. With each passing second, Patricia seemed to shrink before my eyes, this once grand woman reduced into a frantic collection of despair and miscalculations. Her bravado unraveled, and with it, any remaining semblance of the family we once were. The air thickened with betrayal, heavy enough to suffocate the long-held bonds of our lives. Get out, my father's voice sounded like a distant thunder, almost foreign in its authority. Just leave, I don't think I can look at you right now. No, you cannot do this to me, I am your wife, she wailed, desperation bubbling in her voice like an erupting volcano, almost childlike in its fury. Not anymore, my father replied, the finality in his tone striking me like a lightning bolt in the night. And just like that, the life we had known began to twist and tear at the seams, unraveling before our very eyes. I stood there, heart racing, filled with a whirlwind of emotions I had never anticipated, relief intertwined with sadness as I watched the remnants of our family shatter with the weight of Patricia's betrayal. With every breath, I felt the darkness recede, replaced with the glimmer of truth that had been hidden for far too long, hoping that somehow this could be the dawn of a new beginning, free from the chains that had bound us in silence and falsehoods. As the last video played, the oppressive weight of everything that had happened washed over me, and for the first time in what felt like eons, a sense of peace settled in my chest. I had finally stripped away the layers of deceit that Patricia had so carefully constructed around her life, revealing the brittle foundation beneath. The truth hung in the air like a thick fog, casting a surreal atmosphere over the living room where every breath felt laden with years of betrayal. My father's face shifted, morphing from shock into a blazing anger that flickered in his brown eyes. He was a warrior discovering that the enemy had long been hiding in his own castle, and I could feel the heat of his rage radiating like fire around us. In stark contrast to my father's fierce reaction, Patricia stood before us, deflated and ghostly pale like a balloon that had lost all its air. The confidence she had brandished for so long, her glittering armor, was now discarded at her feet, leaving her vulnerable and desperate. This is not what it seems, honey, she pleaded, her voice quaking as though it might shatter into 1,000 fragments any moment. Honey, my father spat out the word like it was poison. What do you mean this is not what it seems? You manipulated my daughter and took everything from her. The room reverberated with the weight of his words, each syllable drilling deeper into the core of my heart. I could feel my own pulse quickening, the adrenaline coursing through me like a runaway freight train. I instinctively reached for my father's hand, intertwining my fingers with his and giving it a firm squeeze. In that pressure, I offered silent support, solidarity built through the storm we had both weathered. The warmth from his skin seeped into me, grounding me as I weathered the emotional upheaval that threatened to drown me. The tension crackled in the air around us, an electric charge of pain and resentment that had culminated in this moment of confrontation. As I looked into my father's tormented eyes, I could see the betrayal etched deeply into his features. You were supposed to look after her, I trusted you, he shouted, his voice breaking slightly, and the sorrow behind those words made my heart ache. I wanted to reassure him that he hadn't failed. It had been Patricia who had crafted an intricate web of lies, ensnaring all of us within her deceitful grasp. Patricia took a step towards us, her outstretched hand trembling as she searched for a foothold in the crumbling landscape of her life. You don't understand, I did it all for love, I wanted what was best for you. The desperate pleading in her voice twisted the knife of betrayal even deeper. No, I shouted, interrupting her with a fierce conviction I didn't know I possessed. You thought love gave you the right to break us. You thought pretending to be a mother somehow made you one. You took everything from me. The pain in my words hung in the air, wrapping around us like a suffocating blanket. My father's expression softened to one of profound sadness, and I could see the gears turning in his mind as he tried to process the enormity of Patricia's treachery. He stood there, a towering figure of strength yet unbearably vulnerable, his shoulders slumping as the distance between him and Patricia widened like an uncrossable chasm. Look at what you have done, he said, his voice quieter now but no less filled with hurt. What you have destroyed, all the memories, the trust, the love, gone. Patricia's lip trembled, and I could almost taste her desperation, like ash on my tongue, tarnished with regret but still laced with the desire to wriggle out of the corner she had painted herself into. I never meant for any of this to happen, I thought. She trailed off, and I could see the wheels turning in her head, searching for an escape route that did not exist. I thought you would understand. I thought I could help. Help, I echoed, incredulous. You think sending me secret letters about my mother's past, letters filled with lies you concocted, is helping? You think pretending to be a mother is actually being one? You failed us both. The words spilled out of me with a ferocity I had been holding back for too long, slashing through the confusion and pain. In that charged moment, I felt a shift within me. The bitterness that had filled my heart for too long began to simmer down, replaced by an odd mix of compassion for my father and a strange pity for Patricia, whose illusions were crashing around her like a deck of cards. You don't get it, do you? I said, my voice softer now but laced with an undercurrent of steel. You thought you could control our lives, but love isn't about control. It's about honesty, truth, and trust. Patricia recoiled as if each word was a physical blow. She opened her mouth to reply, but no words emerged, a choked gasp leaving her lips instead. She was a fragile shell of the formidable woman I once knew, and in that vulnerability I felt a flicker of something that resembled understanding. But then the pain of her betrayal snapped back into focus like a stinging rebuke. My heart sank momentarily, the burden of reality crushing down on me. This was not a fairy tale with a tidy, happy ending, nor a story where forgiveness flowed easily. We had been dealt a harsh blow, a jarring reality from which we now had to recover. Yet as I looked over at my father, his face etched with the lines of grief and anger, I realized I had begun to reclaim my voice through this turmoil. The tides were shifting, the shadows of doubt were retreating, and Patricia's reign of deceit was crumbling before us, collapsing like the house of cards she had constructed around. I turned to my father, gazing into the depths of his brown eyes, and an unexpected sense of tranquility bubbled within me. It was an intense relief knowing that I had fought my battle and won, not with rage or hatred but with the simple, unyielding truth. I could feel the shift in our relationship stirring, a reawakening taking place amidst the wreckage. I had in a sense reclaimed my role as his daughter. The realization was empowering and frightening all at once. Together we had faced the storm, the lies, and the betrayal. We will get through this, I said softly, squeezing his hand tighter as if it might bind us together against the pain. The aftermath of our confrontation with Patricia unfolded in slow, careful steps. Days passed and turned into silent nights where my father and I grappled with the overwhelming burden of shared sorrow. It wasn't easy. It was as if we were trying to thread a needle with hands shaking from the trauma. Conversations were sparse, like whispers carried through a heavy fog as we navigated the jagged shards of honesty and raw emotion. Each dialogue was steeped in pain but also in healing, inching us closer back to one another. I never wanted to lose you, my father admitted one evening, his voice breaking the stillness between us. I could hear the crack in his heart, the vulnerability that lay beneath his tough exterior, and it made me ache for what we had lost. I thought Patricia could be the answer, but it was never her to begin with, I interjected gently. You built a dream out of her lies, and that dream crumbled. It wasn't your fault. We both knew the truth. Her manipulation had woven itself so tightly into our lives that even the strongest bonds were fraying at the edges. Promise me, he said, looking deep into my eyes, we won't let this define us. We will build something new. I nodded fiercely, our bond strengthening with every word. We will build trust again. Days turned into weeks, and with each sunrise, the shadows of Patricia's betrayal grew smaller and less menacing. In our shared determination to heal, we turned toward each other, discovering new depths in our relationship and rekindling the love that had always been there, buried beneath layers of confusion and hurt. I found myself writing again, documenting the process of our restoration, each word holding within it the promise of trust rebuilt. Together, we learned to sift through the ashes of betrayal, salvaging the fragments of who we once were. In the end, as the sunlight shone through the windows of our home, illuminating the corners once draped in darkness, I realized that revenge had transformed into something far more profound. It was not merely about retaliation or punishment. It was about reclaiming my voice in front of lies woven with the intent to hurt, healing the wounds that were not mine alone but shared in a bond my father and I fought to protect. The struggle had not been for naught. Together we had risen above, learning to trust again. And as the days unfolded, I vowed deeply to myself that I would always protect that bond, the connection we had reclaimed amidst the ashes of betrayal. There, in the warmth of healing, I understood that the truest revenge was not destruction but the triumphant reemergence of love and truth.